Now, what happens when an organization comes out with a report that Republicans don't like? Well, it turns out they call to get rid of it. Case in point, the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, which has just recently scored and basically torched the Republican plan to repeal and replace Obamacare. Now, the CBO report that came out listed that 23 million people would lose their insurance under the Republican plan as part of the changes to pre-existing conditions, community ratings, and subsidies to help people afford private insurance. Instead of subsidies, you would replace them with tax credits and health savings accounts, which do nothing for poor people or people with high expensive premiums. And it would also raise premiums for people who are older and have pre-existing conditions, while simultaneously lowering premiums for people who are young and healthy, but they do so by lowering the standards of insurance, what insurance should actually cover. So you can get a bare bones plan, but you can get it at least for cheap. It's not going to cover anything, but you can at least get it cheap. Okay, so that's the whole thing is deceptive, and it's basically a tax cut wrapped up in health reform. Now, knowing that, well, it looks pretty awful for people who voted for it, right, and who created it. Now, even Freedom Caucus leader Mark Meadows had to, according to reports, choke back tears seeing how badly this report affects regular people. I'm not buying it, but whatever. Now, on the other side of that, you have Newt Gingrich saying that the CBO, well, they gave us a bad score, so let's get rid of the CBO. We'll never get a bad score again because there won't be a CBO. Check this out.
Let me ask you about the CBO scoring and the health care
They should abolish CBO.
You don't believe this scoring?
They were totally wrong on Obamacare.
Yeah.
I mean, and I said this before it happened. I said months ago, abolish CBO. It is totally destructive. It is totally dishonest. It was unbelievably wrong about Obamacare. I mean, go back and pull up how wrong they were.
Yeah.
And say, okay, let's assume they're equally wrong about the Republican bill.
Oh. Hey, man, CBO. Got to get rid of the CBO. We don't like the score. It's totally dishonest. Really. We don't like it. Really? Facts are dishonest? Oh, maybe in Trump world, but in the real world, we actually care about facts. And that's what the CBO bases their scores on. Now, I wanted to address that criticism about the CBO on Obamacare. He says, oh man, go back and pull up how wrong they were on Obamacare, and then let's assume they're just as wrong on the AHCA. Challenge accepted, motherfucker. Let's go and do that, shall we? Now, the CBO, according to fact checkers, in its second estimate predicted, and this is on Obamacare, that millions of people would gain coverage. And guess what happened? Millions more people got covered with insurance. Wow. Let's give you more specific, some details. Now, the CBO predicted back when Obamacare was passed, that the number of non-elderly under age 65 people lacking insurance would drop to 30 million in 2016. So what's the actual number? The actual number of people was 27.9 million during the first 9 months of last year. So this is according to the latest figures by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's National Health Interview Survey. So that's fairly close. And not only that, but there's a decline of 20.3 million people since 2010. So there's a lot less people that are uninsured, just like the CBO said it would be. In percentage terms, the CBO predicted 89% of the non-elderly would be covered by last year. The CDC put the actual average at 89.7%. Oops. Now, there was one thing that the CBO was way off on, and let's be fair, let's talk about that. Now, the CBO predicted that in 2016, there would be 23 million people getting policies through the health insurance exchanges. The actual number was 10.4 million during the first half of the year, according to the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid services. Now look, that is less than half percentage that has been predicted. On that, Gingrich, I'll give him a point. So he's right on that one. The CBO was way off on that estimate, as happens. Now, on Medicaid, however, they actually went the other way. They actually underestimated the people that would be on Medicaid. The CBO estimated 10 million would be added to the Medicaid rolls by 2016, even with many states refusing to expand eligibility. But that was too low. As of the first quarter of last year, 14.4 million adults had enrolled in Medicaid as a result of the Affordable Care Act's expansion of the program, according to an analysis by the nonpartisan Kaiser Commission on Medicaid and the Uninsured. Well, that, of course, has something to do with people not able to get better jobs, as well as, of course, wages continuing to be stagnant, and poor people still being poor and not being able to recover. Now, again, that has to do with we didn't have good economic growth as far as people growing from the working class into the middle class to be able to go and sign up to the exchanges. So I think those two numbers are actually pretty well linked and pretty well tied. Less people to be able to afford to get insurance from the exchanges means more people having to go on Medicaid. So they have an inverse effect. So yes, that was off. But was it terribly off? Not necessarily. And again, what they're doing is they base it on the facts and the trends at the time. They actually thought that economic growth would be better getting more people onto the exchange when that did not happen, when wages continued to be stagnant. And of course, there was so much uncertainty because the Republicans were fighting for repeal and replace Obamacare for the entire time. Well, things don't always turn out 100% as predicted, but generally, they're fairly close. Now, in fact, in January 2016, the nonpartisan Commonwealth Fund published an analysis by New York University's Sherry Gliad of CBO's forecast of the ACA's effects. Now, she called the CBO's predictions reasonably accurate compared with actual results in 2014. Now, that changed a little bit, but overall, as far as being reasonably accurate in the CBO's predictions of the ACA, well, that would be the truth. Now, in fact, since talking about the small changes there in prediction, the gap between CBO's prediction and reality has widened now that 2016 figures are available for comparison. But Gliad also found that CBO's predictions were closer to 2014 reality than those of four other forecasters, the Obama administration's own figures, and those of the Rand Corporation, the Urban Institute, and the Lewin Group, a health industry consulting firm. Now, of course, Trump predictions are everybody's going to get covered, and it's going to be tremendous and fantastic. And if you don't have it, sad. So you can't really call the Trump prediction of what's going to happen with the healthcare bill, more people getting insurance, it's going to be cheaper, et cetera, et cetera. Well, you can't really count on that as a real prediction. But as far as some of the other ones, including the CBO, you could reasonably assume that they know what they're talking about based on their track record with Obamacare. In fact, Gliad concluded that given the likelihood of additional reforms to national health policy in future years, it is reassuring that despite the many unforeseen factors surrounding the law's rollout and participation in its reform, the CBO's forecast was reasonably accurate. Not perfect, not 100%, but reasonably accurate. Meaning that if you're to do what Gingrich says, assume that the CBO was as accurate about Obamacare, or I'm sorry, as accurate about Trumpcare as it is about Obamacare, well, then you could say that that their score that they recently gave Trumpcare is reasonably accurate and not 100%, which is very acceptable because it deals with reality. The CBO can be off on some things. There are unforeseen circumstances, of course. There are trends and policy changes that do some different, that cause different effects, of course. But for the most part, when it comes to policy, they tend to be very accurate about their scoring, or fairly or reasonably accurate. And it's because they base their predictions on facts, on things that we know. They look at data, they look at the trends, and they look at the policy, and then what they do is they make their best analysis based on that. Again, this is never going to be 100%, but it's enough to be reasonably deduced that in the case of Trumpcare, it's going to have the effects of 23 million people at least losing their insurance. Now, maybe only, or, at the most losing their insurance, I should say. Now, maybe only 21 million lose their insurance, or 22 million. But overall, the entire impact and the entire problem with Trumpcare is that it will cause millions of people to still lose their insurance. That's the whole problem that we're having. We're not necessarily having a problem with the exact number, which we know can change, can vary, as it did with Obamacare. But the fact that, again, that millions of people are going to lose their insurance and that premiums will go up, we don't know quite the exact number that it will go up by for people who are elderly and people with pre-existing conditions, or how many people are going to end up losing insurance because they're priced out of the market. Well, just because we don't know the exact doesn't mean that we can't ignore the fact that it is going to do it to a good number of people. Millions of people. That's the whole problem with Trumpcare. Okay? But see, they hate admitting that their plan is actually worse, because it makes Obamacare look better. And they really desperately do not want to do that, because if they do that, that's going to make people rather have Obamacare than their alternative. That means they don't get their tax cuts. If you were a politician that actually did care about the people, and maybe, like, what if Mark Meadows was actually true, that he looked at the report and he says, oh my God, I can't believe this. This does hurt so many people. I didn't think it was going to. Holy crap, CBO, you have changed my mind. I'm going to do something else. We're going to go back. We're going to figure this out, and it's going to be a better plan. And it's actually going to prevent all these things that the CBO said. You think they're going to do that? No. Because it's not what this tax reform, it's not what healthcare reform is about from the Republicans. It is about a giant tax cut for the rich. This plan is about, how do we get rid of Obamacare's taxes on wealthy people? How do I funnel more money to my donors? And how do I do it while couching it in health reform? See, you can't do that. You can't get rid of those taxes if your bill to replace the ACA is so bad that most people aren't going to want it, and that if you get it passed, that so many people are going to say, look, you did something that hurt my family. I'm going to vote against you. I'm going to vote for the Democrats. This could lead to a Democratic majority in 2018. So instead of coming up with better plans or ideas to fix the AHCA, or back when Obama was president, to fix the ACA, Republicans like Newt Gingrich, well, they just want to kill the CBO. They want to kill the fact checkers. They want to kill the agencies that actually tell people how this bill is actually going to affect the American people. No partisan spin, just facts. Newt Gingrich can't stand facts and analysis and policy, and so he wants to get rid of these agencies, abolish them, get rid of the CBO, because I don't like what they're saying. That's what their game is. That's what their plan is. Don't fall for it. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.